Looking ahead to Rangers versus Celtic this Sunday in the Scottish Cup at 1 o'clock, I looked at potential for Rangers adjusted press against Celtic in a way that they perhaps struggled in the second half when Celtic got a bit of a foothold. Celtic will get control of the game at some point, so I've looked at potentially having like a 4-4-1-1 block when Celtic are a bit higher in the pitch. Nadiri sitting on McGregor, Chamiti splitting centre halves, and if Hitati was to come into that situation, Nadiri could pick up the spare midfielder, Chamiti drop onto McGregor, and have Raskin and Chukwani spare, just to avoid any scenarios whereby here Nigrin could drop into the half space and pick up the ball from Chukwani and Raskin, because I wouldn't really want people going man for man pressing at this area of the pitch. I would rather conserve and protect. So if Nadiri had been on to Nigrin there, the ball goes back, and then you can slowly work up to your pressure. You can slowly get yourself structured. I think a lot of Nadiri and Chamiti's running was around pivoting off of McGregor, and that's what resulted in them both being very tired after 50 minutes. Now, the purpose of this is we want to lock onto a side, because I think if you get Celtic with Haraho or Tierney only being able to face down the side of the pitch with no real passing options inside, you'll see Rangers turn the ball over more, you'll see Rangers be in transition more, and in the 4-2-2-2 formation, that seems to be where Rangers really lock on to Celtic and perform in the first half and in the second half, although it was 4-3-3 at Parkhead. So ball orientated, I think Mikey Moore could go narrower, Chukwani could go narrower, Nadiri, Charmiti could come narrower and lock on that side so there's protected space, so that Chukwani doesn't have a situation here where he's got two players to pick up. Maid is about to drop into half space and be available. You can kind of force Celtic just down the side, because here when you let them build into your area, it's a half yard away from Adamu getting onto that ball and actually having a shot at goal 1v1. That would be my concern, is how do you stop Celtic at source? So when they're middle in the pitch, how do you keep the middle in the pitch? How do you get them going to the side? So here you can kind of see the 4-4-2 formation sitting quite nicely. Nadiri and Chamiti are both deepened. Now what I would like to see is Moore to be really narrow in on Nigrin here, so Chukwani can be spare, so Raskin can move over, so Scovolson can move over, because what Celtic almost do here is get away with the pass into Adamu, and Maida's gone. A better quality of pass here, and there's a 1-2 putting Maida clean through on goal, and that could just be addressed by Chukwani being 3 yards deeper here. He would have picked up this interception. Mikey Moore would have been closer to, I think it's Nigrin in that scenario, and then Rangers get lucky with the poor pass, but they would still transition in the same way. If Chukwani had won it, played it into Moore, Rangers got a chance to counter-attack. So there is a lot of things happening in this first half that were positive. I just think fine tweaking would have helped going into the second half, and I don't think Rangers should change from that formation. So here again, Raskin could be a bit deeper in that position. Chukwani's probably in a good position. Moore could be narrower, so Chukwani, Raskin and Moore have a 3v2 against Nigrin and Oxlade-Chamberlain in this scenario, so they don't go on the ball, but great pressure by Raskin. I think the ref would have given a free kick if it stopped there. But you're forcing Celtic back, you're not letting them get into Rangers half, and you're not letting them create attacks like they did in the second half, because if Celtic are doing that pass there where it's a chuck down the line and behind, you're limiting their quality. What we then seen in the second half is how I would like to see Rangers force a high press and keep Celtic locked in. So when the ball goes from Sinisolo to Scales onto that side, first movement needs to be Chamiti to lock on, Nadiri to lock onto the goalkeeper. Moore could then invert onto McGregor. Chukwani and Raskin could potentially be spared with one of the centre halves joining Nigrin. And you're really just trying to force a pass to the left back so they get locked on. You want to stop the pass back to the goalkeeper, because then you start doing those. So Chamiti's coming from a space where he can't go back to the goalkeeper. It goes to Tierney. Tierney's only options to play down the line. Now, I would like Moore in closer on the spare midfielder, just to have numbers and overloads around that side, so that when we win the ball back, there's an area to counter attack. And you see here, Suter and Fernandez have got one forward to deal with between them. You could have one of them jump into midfield if Celtic were to break the press, in the way that Celtic did for most of the second half and found spare players and were able to really dominate the ball and slowly start to find their way into the game and control. Because for me, there's not really a lot happening here. If you have Celtic with the ball in this area, it's better than them having the ball in their half. And if you see the pressure that Ndidi could put onto Scales, Moore could have moved in here and be the one closer to McGregor, rather than Charmiti having to do this constant doggy between the two of them. And then what you risk is here this big gap between Moore and Chukwani, because McGregor could play in Oxlade-Chamberlain behind Chukwani when this develops, instead of trying to play the really difficult pass in behind to Yang. and it could have seen a goal before half-time, which might have changed the whole complexion of the game even more so than it already did. It's about how do you find those areas to have overloads without the ball. And I think here, when it goes back, you see Chermiti looking at Scales, you see Nadiri looking at Murray, you see Chukwani jumping to McGregor. So even though that pass goes, Chukwani jumps, Rangers can actually afford the high press here. And you'll see out a shot here that Fernandez is actually kind of half followed Nygren into the pitch. So Rangers are willing, when Celtic are in their own third, to be that aggressive and be that high against them. And I think you can go man for man in those areas. It was something Van Bronckhorst did against Postecoglou in the semi-final really, really effectively. And I think when it's building out onto the centre half or on the side, Rangers could use the opposite 10. So in this scenario, Moore to come in and lock on McGregor when it's with a Tierney, or if it's with a Raho, you would have Skov Olsen in on McGregor, and you would lock on man for man in midfield and leave defenders spare when they're starting to build out on goal side, so you can lock in and create the overloads on one side of the pitch. Mikey Moore ended up on this side of the pitch through following a man, but you'll kind of see what I'm getting at here is if Moore stays locked on to McGregor in this scenario, Nadiri locks onto Scales, Chermiti locks off the goalkeeper. Skov Olsen could actually be a wee bit narrower to force the pass to Tierney first, because once it goes to the left back, you've got potential to fully lock onto a side in a channel. But because he kind of jumps to Tierney early, the pass into Hatate is what creates this big gap and a lot of running. If there's a 2-yard adjustment here from Skov Olsen, Raskin can sit spare, Rangers can wait to press. Then we don't have the situation whereby players are having to run 70, 80 yards. Skov Olsen's still 5-6 yards away from Hatate. Raskin's now 25 yards away. So there's a lot of ground to be made up just by not having the press completely nailed on. And I think that was the intelligence of what Celtic did at half-time and how Celtic really, really moved Rangers about the pitch and started to gain control and create chances, was they didn't really know how to react. And there's a clip coming up in a moment. You'll see the players actually starting to question what we're meant to do, how we're meant to get out, what is it, the desire against Celtic. I think it's here Chermiti would expect someone else to be higher up on Scales, and it causes confusion / frustration of players. So just that clear, concise, how do we press, when do we press, where do we press, is what players crave on both sides of the game. And I think Rangers will go 4-2-2-2. I don't think they'll put the extra man in midfield. I think what they'll do is try and adjust the press. And this is a certain way in which I feel they could do it to avoid Celtic getting the type of control and type of power that they had in the game when they created great chances like this and opened the game up. Because this could have really, really changed the complexion of the game, because this would have made it 2-2 with still 10-15 minutes to go. And Celtic were on the ascendancy. And I think the reason you want to try and stop Celtic in their half is because if Celtic do get the ball down and get the ball playing and get numbers into the box, Celtic are a very dangerous side. They will continue to score goals and post threats. You need to stop it at source and stop it up the other end of the pitch where it's most safe and where you can take the most risks. And another reason for the ball side orientation, although a different formation, a different game, a different manager in Celtic's dugout, it's the same ideas. If you've got Kieran Tierney from 70 yards away from your goal chucking a ball down to the left winger on the outside, it's a lot better than Kieran Tierney getting overlapping in the final third, because we've seen with his goals and assists this year, you need to keep him as far away from your goal as possible. And what Rangers have been good at under Danny Rowe is transition moments, and that was a transition moment from a ball side defending.